Perhaps the Baptist hospital disaster on Tuesday, 17th of October, 2023 shows you just how much this world is like a vast jungle where no one is respected except the strongest. The whole world watched live as the corpses of human beings, most of them children, were burning in the largest war crime and act of genocide in modern times, and the result? Blind silence and vile justification from the filthiest creatures on this planet. A day before the massacre, Russia submitted a draft resolution to the Security Council to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, and the United States, Britain, and France rejected it, allowing the Zionists to continue killing and burning. And it so happened as well that before the same massacre, the global media was publishing headlines asking, could Hamas possibly be hiding under hospitals and schools? A filthy system of collusion gave the green light to the occupation to carry out the massacre you all witnessed. This tragedy is yet another testimony that airstrikes are the tools that the criminals use to cause as much destruction as possible. But destroying everything doesn't make you a winner, as we'll see today. And so may Allah's mercy be upon those who were lost, and may His curse be upon everyone who killed, participated, or even stayed silent about all these crimes. A new episode, let's get started. Whenever a disaster strikes, I rush to the history books, open them, and look at what happened in the past. Because I firmly believe that history repeats itself and that these events have happened before in exactly the same way, but with different names and dates. Since the year 1099, the Kingdom of Jerusalem was under occupation for 86 years until the occupiers thought that things had settled down and their rule was stable. So they started building their residential communities and a large army to protect this kingdom, and from time to time, they would launch military raids on the passing caravans to loot their goods from them, or they would attack the native inhabitants themselves to silence, intimidate, and control them. This tyranny continued until the nightmare that shook the throne of the kingdom in 1187 under the leadership of Salah al-Din in the infamous Battle of Hattin. The battle destroyed the myth of their so-called strength and broke the occupiers' fortress, so they ran back to Europe crying out, "The savage Muslims are slaughtering our children, abusing our women, and killing our young men." As a result, the Third Crusade was prepared just 2 years later in 1189. France under the leadership of Philip Augustus, England led by Richard I, and Germany, which in today's terms would be replaced by America, was led by Frederick Barbarossa, but he drowned along with most of his army on the way to Jerusalem. But when the Crusades failed to take revenge on Salah al-Din and could not match his warriors who fought valiantly and came victorious on the battlefield, the Crusaders turned their aggression toward unarmed civilians on the shores of Acre, where they killed and executed more than 3,000 civilians in the year 1191, most of whom were, sadly, women and children. They did that to show their people a supposed victory, to tell them that they killed thousands of Muslims just like the Muslims killed their crusaders. The historians, who were basically the media of their time, called Richard I, back then Richard the Lionheart, and portrayed him as a brave warrior, when in reality he was a killer of innocent civilians, people who were tied up by their hands and feet, completely helpless. These tragic events are quite similar to what we are all witnessing today and the reality we are sadly living in, though with one major difference. Back then, Salah al-Din had soldiers from Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and all across the Muslim lands fighting alongside him. These brave fighters didn't abandon him or leave him to fight his own battle, nor did they use their historians to demonize him. On the contrary, they united with him. They formed a single front against the occupiers, to the point where when Richard tried to weaken Salah al-Din's army, he considered abandoning his main objective of conquering Jerusalem and planned to invade Egypt to cut off his supply lines. Actually, Richard referred to Egypt as Salah al-Din's fuel tank at the time. And today, in the midst of Arab and Islamic outrage over the massacres that have happened and are still happening to the people of Gaza, our governments are turning a deaf ear, completely ignoring it. In fact, if someone from our people wanted to volunteer on their own and go help Salah al-Din, they'd be labeled as being a terrorist, and they'd probably get caught at the very first checkpoint on their way there. These are the same criminals who are now provoking Arab youth, and despite the massacres people are witnessing day and night, the governments are telling them, "You've worn us out with your slogan, 'To Jerusalem we march, millions of martyrs,' but when it got serious, you backed out and ran into hiding? Then why can't you be brave enough to open the borders and let them go?" Oh, I almost forgot, our Arab governments are too cowardly to upset Richard, Barbarossa, and Philip. What a bitter shame. Not only that, some of the Arab rulers declared their unwavering support to the Zionist occupation. They are heart and soul, pledging their allegiance to them and openly offer them full loyalty and obedience day and night. Then came this guy who blatantly told the Zionists to win a favor with them, what you are about to hear.
If there's any idea of displacement, then there's the Negev desert in Israel. It's very possible that the Palestinians are temporarily moved there until Israel completes its declared mission of eliminating the resistance or the armed groups in Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and others in the Gaza Strip. Then after that, they might bring them back if they wish.
But Colombia broke the silence of all Arab rulers. Colombia, a country located at the other end of the world, its people are neither Muslim nor Arab, nor even part of the same miserable continent to begin with. Colombia still took a stand and expelled the Zionist ambassador, asking him to leave immediately because their president, as a representative of its people, condemned the massacres committed against the civilians of Gaza, which were completely unjustified. The Zionist ambassador, of course, didn't like that, but the Colombians still told him, "Get out of our territory, out you go. We don't harbor criminals on our land." This reminded me of a famous saying by Sayyid Qutb, may Allah have mercy on him, which he wrote back in 1966. "These Arab armies you see are not here to defend Islam and Muslims, but rather they are here to kill you. They will never fire not even a single shot at the enemy." This quote also brings us back to the same historical game. Same as always, just swap out the black and white image for something modern, multicolored, and up to date. Law enforcement forces look like ravaging beasts against the unarmed civilians of Al-Azza and Al-Manshub, while they turn into docile and harmless sheep in front of the occupation, Philip and Richard. Can you grasp the projection? Can you imagine Colombia? Can you imagine the level of misery we're in? Even the draft resolution that Russia submitted to the Security Council to stop the fire on unarmed civilians in Gaza, this ceasefire proposition was arrogantly blocked by the US, Britain, and France. That in itself doesn't mean that Russia is clean either. They didn't submit that resolution out of love for Palestinians, but rather to spite the West that supports Ukraine. And the very same Russia was killing Arab, Muslim, Syrian people just miles away from Palestine. So in simple words, international law is just a big lie and no one really cares about treaties and accords. The Zionist occupation is their ally and is backed by them and can do whatever it wants. End of story. The same history is repeating itself here, yes, but there's a difference. Philip and Richard were very straightforward and called their military campaign the Crusade. Instead of calling it supporting allies or strategic partnerships or the diplomatic terms used today, and although the tyrannical actions are exactly the same. If anyone in England or France opposed Richard or Philip decisions to go into the war at that time, then their fate would be either execution, imprisonment, or exile. And this was done bluntly and was all openly declared. Back then, they didn't twist the narrative and didn't pretend that they upheld the freedom of expression and human rights. They didn't claim that they were civilized, but our modern governments do. And when people believed them and went out to express their opinions, they were suppressed and beaten just for uttering the word Palestine. Take the illustrator Steve Bell. Just because he drew a caricature of Netanyahu showing him holding a scalpel and cutting into his stomach the shape of the Gaza Strip, the British Guardian fired him and did not renew his contract after more than 40 years of experience. And that's not to mention the many engineers and doctors in different parts of Europe who were fired from their jobs or thrown in jail on charges of supporting Palestine. Add to that those who are being threatened with deportation from France simply because they announced their boycott of McDonald's for declaring its support for the occupation. It's utter madness, I swear to God. And on top of all this complete insanity and hysteria happening, add the utter disgrace that's going on here in this dark corner of the planet called the Arab nations. While the number of corpses in Gaza is endless, and when there are no more spaces in morgues to preserve them, no shrouds enough to cover them, and not even a single authority capable of counting and reporting the number of the dead to give us a figure, while all of that was happening, here we are playing a friendly football match between Egypt and Algeria held in the UAE on the Monday after the attack on the hospital. We're talking about a non-competitive and friendly match which could have been postponed, cancelled, or even scrapped entirely and nothing would have happened. It's not a tournament, not some big championship or anything of importance. Moreover, the UAE government went the extra mile to show off how evil it could be. They didn't want to just be on the wrong side. No, they were ready to go all the way, even beyond the devil himself. So they banned the Palestinian flag from entering the stadium during the match, just to stop the youth from chanting for Palestine. And the only fan who actually managed to slip through security checks was a girl who had the flag folded up like a piece of cloth in her bag. She got in with it and made it all the way inside the stadium. But when she took out the flag and draped it over her shoulders, they sent security to grab her and escort her out of the stadium entirely. Could you imagine that? Even the moment of silence that teams like England and Australia observed for the victims of the attack, the UAE authorities refused to observe it as well at the Emirates Stadium, not even as a token gesture, because they simply don't care about the victims and the loss of human life. Actually, after all this madness, it wouldn't have been surprising if the UAE government observed a moment of silence for the Zionists. And when they get cornered, they come out with the same tired lines. So you really think that carrying flags, observing moments of silence, and chanting are going to liberate Palestine? Listen, Palestine has its own men on the ground who are fighting to free it. No one can deny that regardless of which side they're on. We're talking here about the Arab rulers' own esteem, or rather the lack of it, and how their image has become a disgrace in front of their nations and all Muslim people around the world. The West, right before our eyes, openly supports the Zionists with money, weapons, politics, media, human resources, strategies, and everything the Zionists could possibly want or need. But the Arab rulers, in all their disgrace, are unable to lift a finger. Even the chirp of a cricket is louder than their voices. Yes, simply just writing the word Palestine and saying it out loud is an act of courage. Spreading the truth in the middle of the swamp of lies we're living in, that too is courage. Calling out criminals everywhere is also an act of courage. But here one indeed could say, it's not the eyes that go blind, but the hearts within the chests that do. All the videos, articles, and posts that our Muslim youth shared and have been sharing since the start of the war on Gaza on social media have indeed changed the awareness of many and helped them see the truth. Here's an example.
With Fox News. Fox News is Zionist news. Corporate Zionist news. You're full of shit. That's what you are.
I just want to ask you,
I
do
don't
you
give a-
care about the babies that were...
No, they were never beheaded. That was a made-up story. That's not true. It's bullshit. Show me the fucking pictures now. Show me the pictures. You're a lying full of shit. You're full of shit. You and Fox 5 News is full of shit.
Do you think that what happened this weekend is okay?
It is okay because it's international law. Resolution 242 says when an occupying force has the right to come in when they occupy your country, you have a right, any means necessary, to defend your country with violence.
Can you now understand how a single word can spread internationally and the massive impact it could make? So don't underestimate a word you write or a profession you dedicate to this cause or a hand you extend in any form of support. Social media is the second front in this war, and it's what made the global public opinion turned against those who support Zionists right in the heart of their own countries. Social media is what exposed them to their own people, after both the Arab and the global media channels let us down and let the Palestinians down with us. So even if they restricted your access on platforms like Facebook, or if they suppressed your content on Instagram and Telegram, then go ahead and open an account on another platform like X, because for now we are free to express ourselves there. Our space there is still open and is reaching far and wide. Our presence there, thanks to Allah, has spread the word to the whole world so far, so don't hesitate and use this free space. The US arrested protesters, the UK threatened to arrest protesters, Germany, France, and even India have also arrested protesters. All of these people were arrested for the very same crime, chanting the name of Palestine. It's a global media war with lies as its main weapon. They accuse the resistance of slaughtering children. They blame the missile that hit the Baptist hospital on the resistance, saying that it was supposedly fired by mistake by them. Their claims went as far as accusations of the abuse and torture of those in captivity, but they never had a single piece of evidence to support these claims. The goal here is to smear and demonize the Palestinian resistance. But contrary to their expectations, the resistance has only gained more honor and pride in the eyes of the people. Even the people of Gaza themselves, who stand without shelter under skies raining down missiles beneath a storm of fire, despite all their suffering, they still chanted the name of the resistance. All of this while the so-called invincible army could not dare enter Gaza and stayed at its borders, intimidating civilians and telling them to leave and evacuate their homes toward Egypt and to abandon their land. Their supposed reason for asking them to evacuate was that they feared for their safety and their lives, while in reality they're exterminating them and hunting them down from the air. They didn't dare enter Gaza. Allah Almighty saw that they should not enter it because they couldn't overcome the fear casted into their hearts. They're only brave enough when it comes to air power. Their aircrafts fly comfortably while carrying death, only to drop it on buildings full of innocent people, killing them from distance before returning safely to their bases. That's the only kind of destruction they're good at, but that's also the kind that doesn't achieve any victory on the ground. Because when it comes to ground invasions, when it comes down to man-to-man combat, that's a whole different story. The West, the Zionists, and us, everybody already knows exactly what the outcome would be for them, and they're terrified of it, but of course they will never publicly admit it. And here we go back again to the same fascinating game of history, but this time the picture comes from even further back, from the Holy Quran, more than 1,400 years ago. When Moses, peace be upon him, commanded their ancestors, the children of Israel, to enter the Holy Land through a ground invasion, because at that time they had no other option but to march in on foot if they wanted to enter the same geographical area. They didn't have any aircrafts or warships that they could use to enter the land. The ancestors of the Zionists, as testified by the Quran thousands of years ago, replied to Moses' commands and said, "O Moses, indeed within it are a people of great strength, and we will never enter it until they leave it. Once they leave it, then we will enter." Go in, son, come on, we have America, Britain, and France with us. America? Seriously? Isn't that the same America that got stuck in Vietnam for 19 years and finally it fled from there in a major scandal? And that other lovely coalition, weren't they the ones who stayed in Afghanistan for about 21 years? And in the end, they also left dragging the tales of failure behind them? And after all these years of war, the ones who stayed took the land and ruled over it, despite everything, were indeed the Afghans themselves. No, man, America and its allies are just like us. They're only good at airstrikes and dropping bombs from above and causing destruction from a safe distance. So the bottom line is plain and simple. If they leave it, then we shall enter it. And on the Egyptian side, the supposedly strongest Arab army and the only lifeline for the people of Gaza due to the shared border, the only scene that you will see is this one before your eyes. Days in the same situation, with aids coming in from various parts of the world and from countries that rush to help and support the people of Gaza, who have been cut off from the world without electricity, water and fuel. Add to that, no medical treatment either. But Egyptian authorities prevented these aids to cross over to the Gaza Strip until they got the okay from the Zionists. This is according to the statement made by the Egyptian foreign minister, who said that they're waiting for their permission to deliver these supplies to the Muslims and Arabs under siege. And here we cannot play our usual history game again and refer to the example of Uthman ibn Affan's caravan and how Uthman defied Quraysh and brought in his caravan of supplies for Shah Abi Talib during the siege on the Muslims. Because our great leader already used that story before, citing it as an example of how Muslims endured the siege to the point where they started eating tree leaves when they ran out of food. So we're supposed to follow their example and endure poverty, inflation and plague and all that. And to top it all, the Zionists bombed the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Palestine from both the Palestinian and Egyptian sides 4 times, to the point that they brought down the concrete walls on the Egyptian side, which were just recently built and put up right before all our eyes. As a response to the Zionist attacks, the great Egyptian leader, bless him, has neither sovereignty nor authority. Instead, he just sat back to fully admire the beauty of the chandelier in the conference hall, counting every crystal in it. Didn't he just recently threaten the Turkish involvement in Libya, saying that Jufra and Sirte, which are 500 kilometers from Egyptian borders, are a red line, and that anyone who crosses it will get hurt? And as usual, the goats applauded wholeheartedly this great victory and cheered out loud, "Long live Egypt," 3 times. So what about the Egyptian borders that were attacked by the Zionists while you just sat there waiting? Isn't there a pink line on these borders like the lines from Barbie's world? Or are we all sitting around waiting for the Crusader campaign leaders to make a decision, even if that decision is to displace the people of Gaza from their land into Sinai? And all we could do then is open our arms and say, "A noble brother and the son of a noble brother, welcome, you are our honored guests." The truly beautiful aspect about the history game that we played today in this episode is that all the endings were in favor of the rightful people of the land, despite the tyranny, the killing, and the massacres. The Crusades did not stop after the 3rd one that we mentioned in the episode. No, after the 3rd came the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, up until the very last of them, which was the 9th in the year 1271. The fate of all these crusades was the same at the end: defeat. And the rightful owners of the land were victorious at the end. And now we are all currently watching the 10th Crusade broadcasted live on air. And yes, we are unfortunately witnessing it happen from within a nation that was once vibrant, but sadly became motionless and lifeless. Yet, a few men have come forth, resiliently strong in their fight against the disbelievers, but merciful among themselves, untouched and unscathed by those who abandoned them. These men are standing against those who will not fight them together, and if they fight, they will fight only in fortified townships or from behind walls. Their unity is only superficial. Their violence among themselves is severe. You think they are together, but their hearts are diverse. They want to steal the geography without learning the lessons of history and its wisdom. That is because they are people who do not reason. And that's it, believer. And assalamu alaikum.